there, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Andrew McNair. So happy to have you along with us today. We're talking about the importance of creating a legacy plan for your retirement and for your family. So, Andrew, tell us the basic documents we might want to consider for an estate plan, please.
Absolutely. These are what we refer to in the office as basics. Everyone should have a will. People die without a will every day, but if you die without a will, it may not be the will that you want. I mean, the state of Florida, the state of Alabama has a will written for everyone that dies without one. And that's why it's so essential to have a will, because when your family goes through probate court, again, a will does not bypass probate. But when you have a will, at least the probate judge in probate can decide where you want your money to go, instead of the state of Alabama or Florida using their one size fits all document. So a will, one of the essential basic documents. Number two is a living will. Sadly, to pull the plug or not to pull the plug, everyone stands differently on this topic of what they want to happen when they get to the end of their life. And this should not be in just an opinion of one family member over another family member. No, it should be in black and white that says, this is what my wishes are, and respect my wishes. After the second is the third documents, and those are powers of attorney. And they're typically two. There's a medical and a financial power of attorney. And a medical and financial power of attorney, again, are essential documents. And here's why. If you have a TSP, a 401k, an IRA, you need to underline this. An IRA stands for an individual retirement account. Emphasize individual. It's not a joint retirement account. So if you get incapacitated, you're demented, you're disabled, how will your spouse access your retirement account? You say, well, she's a beneficiary. And I'm like, well, Mr. Client, she's a beneficiary. That means you have to be dead. And I mean, you're not dead in this scenario. And that's when the wife kind of nudges her husband and says, but I could finish him off. And you don't want your spouse to have to finish you off to get access to your accounts.
No.
So this is why you need a will, a living will, and two powers of attorney. And so we have an attorney, an estate planning attorney. This is all he does. He doesn't do DUIs on the weekends. He only does estate planning. And he can tell you the basics are what you need and how much it costs to produce those for your family. It is not as cumbersome as people think it is. And then he's going to talk to you about optional documents, which we can get into later in the show. But he can talk to you about optional documents and what you do need and what you don't need, which is just as important, because you don't want to overpay and pay for that attorney's Porsche payment that you didn't even need.
Right. Oh my gosh. So a lot of things you need to have and have done for doing proper estate planning. Again, mention some of the missteps that we should try to avoid, please.
Yeah, I think some of the missteps is a lot of legal documents and a lot of bank accounts and investment accounts don't have a plan B or a plan C. We run across this a lot. Again, I have an estate planning attorney in my office. I am not an estate planning attorney, but you should see these meetings where Scott is reading through the legal documents and it says, your spouse is your power of attorney. Your sister is your executor. And the clients say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, he says, Mr. Client, he flips the pages opposite so they can see it. He says, you do not have a plan B. So if you get incapacitated together on the way to dinner, you fall while you're in Yosemite, there's no plan B. And you have to have a plan B and a plan C. You need a primary, a contingent, and a tertiary on all of your legal documents. And when's the last time you went to the credit union, the bank, and said, hey, I got a lot of accounts here. Have you made sure, banker, that all of my accounts have a primary, a contingent, and a tertiary bank account? This mistake will always ring true in my life when I'm thinking about this, because it was startling to hear this news. Luann, I had a client that was a client for a long time. And I told her, I said, you have a trust. You need to make sure that all of your bank accounts point to this trust. Well, she had more banks than I recommended. She had like 4 or 5 banks. I told her, you really only need like 2.
Right.
Well, she never narrowed it down. So she had all of these banks. All of them were going to the trust, but one. And one of them had a $10,000, $15,000-ish balance. She had to spend $3,000 for her family to go through probate out of her assets when she died unexpectedly, and she never got to that bank account. So Scott had to charge her family $3,000 to go get $10,000. And that's a tragedy.
That is a tragedy. I will say on that point, my husband realized I wasn't on all the bank accounts. Now, he's one that has
Wow.
several bank accounts. He needs to listen to you, but he kind of likes to have money in different places just so it's harder for him to get to, I
Right.
guess. That's his strategy. I don't know. But,
Sure.
but he realized that I wasn't on one of them for sure. And I was like, what? So we went to the bank and I got on that. But yeah, you got to make sure that these things are done ahead of time. So, otherwise you're going to make some big old mistakes. You got to have that. And then you're leaving a lot to chance, too. I will also say, you mentioned something earlier about, if like wishes, final wishes for like your kids. My
Sure.
cousin was told by her mother, I want to leave you. You want to make sure you get about $100,000 so you can put in that pool for your grandkids. Well, her
Mm,
money ran out. Basically, my aunt's
mm,
money ran out, and her big brother was the one that was in charge, was the power of attorney or whatever, and the money was gone, and she was so upset because she thought
right.
he spent the money, and she meant for me to have 100,000, and there was none left for
Right.
that pool.
And
So that,
that's what a
yeah.
good communication, family meetings that we've definitely led those family meetings. So there's not a lack of communication. And that's why it's so important to get your legal documents done so it expresses your wishes. And so if you have no legal documents, that's okay. That's why we can schedule you a visit. When you sit down with me to talk about your retirement plan, your financial plan, and your estate planning with Scott Malik, he'll tell you what documents you need and what you don't need. And then because we do this as a co op together, and I talk about the rental properties you have and the investments you have, he may recommend that you need a trust or a life estate. He can tell you what documents you do need. And also, if you already have legal documents, he'll review them complimentary. So do take us up on this second opinion to have a second set of eyes on your legal documents complimentary by calling 1 800 848 8768. That's 1 800 848 8768.
And their website, swan-capital.com. You're listening to What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair of Swan Capital. So happy to have you along with us.